BYU Cincinnati extended pregame here on KSL News Radio. We're getting ready for the Cougs and the Bearcats from here in the Queen City. The Big 12 clash. Who would have thought? Tell someone 5 years ago BYU and Cincinnati is a game with conference championship game implications in a power league. You would have said you were crazy. Even 2 years ago when these two Big 12 newcomers joined the league, they've risen quite fast in this conference, and now it's a huge game with national eyeballs on it here in Cincinnati. Mitch Harper, Kyle Ireland with you. Nate Slack, our producer of Cougar Sports Saturday. We hold it down every week here on KSL News Radio, noon to 3, talking all things BYU sports. So subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcast, Cougar Sports Saturday. Kickoff tonight at 6 o'clock, guys, and before we toss it to Greg Grubel, Hans Olsen, Matt Biamonte, and the crew, we got to get to our score predictions for this big game. Kyle, let's get to our producer, Nate Slack. Nate Slack, our producer, follow him on X, Nate Slack 5. How you see this one playing out, Nate?
You know, if you were to ask me after the Texas Tech game, I was low. I was in a bad spot just because of how the offense looked and the special teams miscues. But after seeing how BYU played against TCU, man, I was so excited for today because I think this is a game where BYU can play really well. Just looking at how Cincinnati played the last 2 weeks against Arizona and Utah, I think BYU defensively is at worst on an equal playing field as Arizona and Utah. They really put a lot on Sorsby and Cincinnati, and they couldn't move the ball and score a lot of points. So I've got BYU winning big today. I've got BYU winning 38-21. And, you know, if a couple weeks ago I would not have felt that way, but I think with the health of the team right now, Jack Kelly and Isaiah Glasgow are playing as good as they've played in a couple months or so. LJ Martin looked a lot better last week. As you mentioned last segment, we get Cody Hagan back today. So I think all things are shaping up for a big BYU win tonight.
Love that. Let's get to Kyle Ireland. You can follow him on X, Kyle Ireland, and all social medias. He hosts Cougar Sports Saturday every week here on KSL. Kyle, how do you see this one playing out? I know you and I, when we were in Lubbock, you were feeling confident in that one, but there was still a little bit of nervousness about that game because Tech was so good. How are you feeling about this one against the Bearcats?
Yeah, Mitch, I whiffed on that pick. I'm just going to own that one right now.
Hey, we all did. We all did.
I thought BYU would win a close one in that one. I thought that they would show up, Mitch, and they didn't. Yeah. And I think that BYU has really taken that one to heart. I do think that this team is different than last year's team. I thought that they were a little more different going into that game, but I do think that last week was a nice response. And like Nate said, I think that BYU matches up quite well with this Cincinnati team. And you look at their last two games, those bad losses to Utah, or the bad loss to Utah, and then a close loss there to Arizona a week ago. But I think that BYU ends up putting out some style points today. I really think that this is the way that Kalani Sitake is going to message the committee, because he's not going to be vocal. He's not going to be campaigning and picketing for BYU to be in the college football playoff, but he's going to let the play on the football field speak for itself. And so the way that they were able to put up a decent number of 44 points last week in a big margin of victory against the Horned Frogs, I think BYU is going to look to do that again today against the Bearcats. So I'm going to say BYU wins this one 48-20, Mitch. I do think it's a blowout, and BYU ends up having an excellent offensive performance. The defense has been outstanding. Even in that Texas Tech game, Mitch, you talked about it, endlessly for the last couple of weeks about, BYU's defense showed up in that game. They've showed up all season long. I think that they're going to have an outstanding performance today as well, but the offensive performance also matches that.
We're going to start calling you Provo Kyle after that pick, because Provo Dave Portnoy had BYU 49-28. You have BYU exceeding that. I love the pick. I think that would be amazing. Just real quick before we get to my pick, 48-20, do you think BYU just pops off like a 30-point lead and then Cincinnati makes it close? Like, how do you see it playing out within that?
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of those games where it's close for the first little bit. I think maybe BYU goes into halftime with, a 10, 14-point lead, so it's a comfortable margin at the break, but BYU just rolls in the second half.
Just puts the hammer down. I like it. BYU, for me, gets this win. I don't feel as good about a 4-touchdown victory as Provo Kyle, but I do feel good that BYU gets the win. I'm going to say BYU 33, Cincinnati 23. Cougs get it done. They get some celebratory Skyline chili on the plane. Chad Kahaha was eating Skyline chili last night here in Cincinnati. So I think the Cougs improved to 10-1. Don't underestimate the significance of 10-win seasons. BYU reaches that mark tonight. That's been extended pregame coverage of BYU and Cincinnati. We'll toss it over to the crew here in Cincy for the call. BYU versus the Bearcats here on KSL News Radio. Have a great game day, everyone.